Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn. Welcome, everybody. Here we are again for our Systematic Avodah Initiative program for Hey Teves. So Mazel Tov and a good Yom Tov, Didan Natzach, all good things. We have the great schus to have here Rabbi Ahrele Loschak. He is an author, an editor, and a rabbi who lives in Brooklyn, New York with his family. He edits for JLI's Popular Torah Studies program. And if I understand correctly, you're also in Shluchus. Yeah. Right here. What a great schus. Yeah. So here we have him. Thank you so much.
Okay, good evening. And good Yom Tov to you as well. So as was said, obviously we're here for Hey Teves. And do you mind if I take a glass of water? Are you okay? Sure. I'm going to try to, the less and less formal, the better. So. So there's obviously a lot to talk about the Hey Teves. So just a few things, just preliminaries. First of all, I'm going to assume that like the storyline, the history, the background, most of what went on, you are familiar with, correct? Now I'll tell you why I'm assuming that. I'm assuming that A, because I would assume that you do know it. And number two is because as far as like the history buff and all the ins and outs and the backgrounds, anyways, not so much, I'm not necessarily the right person for that type of stuff anyways. So I think we'll leave the story for the people who know the story very well. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to do that over the past 24 hours or in general. So, just to go over it briefly, obviously, we all know what the story was. And so what I want to do instead of going to the actual story, because again, I think we all know it anyways, is just want to kind of pick out some themes, some ideas to talk about from the story, and to focus on some of the things that the Rebbe himself taught us and spoke about in that period, particularly when it was, after the victory in federal court on Hey Teves itself. So that's what I do want to do. Fair? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So, there's a lot of things obviously to focus on, and I was looking through some of the stuff, some of the things that are said, some of the things that are stated, and I think there's one major nakuda which I think is an important idea to think about and to focus on, and hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate it and pull it out as we go along. But before I do that, I guess maybe it'll be worth figuring out what's my baseline here. So maybe you could give me an idea of what you know already as far as the themes of the day. Because every day Hey Teves is a theme. Every Chassidishe Yom Tov has a theme. So you tell me first. What do you know about Hey Teves? Like, what's the theme of the day? If you had to say it in a couple sentences.
The Rebbe and his belongings belong to the people.
The Rebbe and his belongings belong to the people. Okay, great. That was one sentence. That's great. Very concise. Anything to add?
Level der B'tachtainim, the courts were able to see that. First of all, the Rebbe shouldn't go to court, and secondly, that the Sfarim belong to the Chassidim.
Okay, which is like you said in level der B'tachtainim. Okay, that's great. That's true. Anything else to add?
It's also the kitrug against like Chassidus in our age. I feel like every Rebbe had a time period where Lamайлai wasn't meant to, it's like maybe you're spreading too much, you're going too far. And I think the Rebbe also saw this as a spiritual, as a ruchnistic kitrug.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So all of the above, of course, that's definitely all part of the themes, and I think we're going to touch upon all the above. Hopefully in this hour. I was thinking about it. Like if I bring them the past, but Chaim, the Gunim, this an hour straight, it's very daunting, I must say. But hopefully we'll be able to survive. You'll grade me at the end.
I should have brought Chaim.
No. I'm saying it's usually used to breaks, intermissions, when you get exhausted a little bit, you just say, okay, Chaim, and then let the people sing it. But I bet that's the greater the challenge, hopefully the better the result. So, yeah, like you also just to back up, just to begin. So just the very notion that the day even has a theme, that's already, I think, interesting to think about, because that's something that we're kind of trained to think about as Chassidim. we're trained to think about every day, every Yom Tepagra has a theme, which if we want to back up for a second, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Think about on any forget about Yom Tepagra for a second. Think about any Yom Tov, right? So you have, let's say, Pesach, right? You've heard of Pesach? Mm-hmm. So Pesach is an event. It's an event that happened in Jewish history. We were slaves and we went free, right? So it commemorates a certain event that happened in our history, and it was the Exodus from Egypt. But if you ask anyone, right? What is Pesach about? What is Pesach about in one word? Freedom, leaving Egypt. Exactly. It's about freedom. So every Yom Tov, and not only the Chassidishe Yom Tov, but every...
Sorry, we're just clipping it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, lapel mic, that's why it's called that, right?
Yeah.
So every Yom Tov has a theme, has an idea that goes behind it. And that's true for every Yom Tov, not only the Chassidishe Yom Tov. And so we're kind of conditioned to think that way. And that itself is already an important thing to recognize, that when things happen, when an event happens in life or anything happens, it's time to take pause and to reflect on it and to kind of look into it and to see what is that theme. And what's the theme of that day? What's the theme of that event that happened? Why did it happen? What does it represent? What's the cosmic impact? What's the cosmic implication of whatever happened? So I'm going to get back to that a little bit, but yeah, I think I hope to revisit that point at a point. But just first and foremost, when it comes to Hey Teves, so I was thinking about something else, but then I decided, it was last night, I decided that I was going to take a look at the actual Sikha the Rebbe himself said on Hey Teves when it happened on that Tuesday. And I was trying to put my kid to bed and it wasn't working out. So I had a lot of time to actually read through it. So, because I just was able to pull it up really easy on my phone, so the app was great. So I was able to learn through the whole Fabring, the whole Sikha, as I was unsuccessfully trying to put my baby to bed. And it's a beautiful Sikha. And it's full of incredible ideas. And so I want to just, before I get to what I've talked about before, I think just one nekuda that the Rebbe shares in that Fabring, and it's it's a very beautiful idea. It starts like this. So first of all, the original Hey Teves was on a Tuesday, right? I don't know how many I wouldn't think that that's an important detail. But if you open up the Sikha of that, if you open up that Sikha, and the Rebbe speaks, so the very first thing the Rebbe notes is that it's a Tuesday. What's Tuesday famous for? It's Yom Gimel Shulchan Kitayv, right? It's Tevel Shemayim and Tevel Brias, which I was thinking about it. Now, again, I'm not a massive Bucky in any way, shape, or form. There's many people who know a lot more than me. But in my limited knowledge of what I've learned in my life, I don't know of anybody else who ever made mention of that medrash or like ever made it a big deal. Meaning the fact that Tuesday is Yom Gimel Shulchan Kitayv, I don't think any Gadol of Yisrael ever like cared that that's the reality. Maybe like, and if you look at some random shalos or tshuvas, when some Rav is writing a tshuva and he dates the tshuva, maybe if it's Yom Gimel, he'll write Shulchan Kitayv. I don't read shalos or tshuvas every day, but I've never seen that. But for the Rebbe, it was a very significant detail. It was very important. It was important that if it was on Tuesday, we should mention that it's Yom Gimel Shulchan Kitayv. And in that Sikha, actually, the Rebbe goes, how it's Tevel Shemayim and how it's Tevel Brias. The Rebbe kind of figures it out. I'm not going to get into that, but this just kind of, again, this idea of really paying attention to every single detail and mining it for what it's worth, which is a way of living that's really, really an incredible way of living. But so anyway, so Rebbe goes through the Sikha and he notes that it's Tuesday. So what do we do on Tuesday? We read the Chumash for Parshas Tuesday, Parshas Vayigash. So it's not we didn't learn it yet this year, but I'm sure you know the story. So what happens in Shlishi Parshas Vayigash? Anybody know offhand? Yeah. Shlishi Parshas Vayigash. For Shlishi Parshas Vayigash, we have the big reveal. So when Yosef finally reveals himself to his brothers, and then Yosef gives what could be arguably one of the most incredible speeches of human character ever. Yosef gives a remarkable speech to his brothers, right? Because they're feeling bad. Oh my gosh, that brother who sold into slavery. Now we have to face him. And Yosef says some of the most incredible words ever. What does he say? This much you know, right? What does Yosef say? I have to like every once in a while get input just to know that everyone's still alive.
It's not you, Hashem.
Right. It's not you. What's the words? You didn't send me here. Kim elikim. Hashem sent me here. He sent me here before you as a lifesaver. Whatever.
Like you're not that important.
Right. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not exactly about it. So the Rebbe focuses on the story and draws the simple lesson that can be learned, but obviously in many words to kind of really bring out to the people who the Rebbe was talking to then, and for any chassid who chooses to pick up the sikha at any time, you could look at it. It's the sikha for Hey Teves Tashim Mem Zayin, and the Rebbe brings out the hero in a very simple language, which is like this. What was Yosef's approach? Yosef's approach was something that's he said it in the context that happened in his life. But it can happen in every person's life and in every context. Namely, that things happen to us. Things happen all the time to us. And not necessarily the things that happen to us, not necessarily always positive, or do they necessarily look positive. So now when something negative happens to us, there's different ways of how we could choose to react. And what Yosef HaTzadik does when he reacts to the challenge, and he says, it's not, he completely doesn't, like you said, they're not important. He completely doesn't view his brothers as the perpetrators of the events that happened to him. See, that's the key for Yosef emerging as, if you want to use, modern psychological terms, for Yosef not to emerge as a victim. The way he's able to do that in such a healthy way was to recognize that the people who did the events to him, they're not really the perpetrators. Rather, it's Hashem. So once you recognize that Hashem is the one who's doing it to you, and the people who are doing it, and the actors are doing it to you in your life are really just puppets that Hashem is kind of pulling the strings with. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, so if Hashem is pulling these strings, he's making these events happen to me, what message is contained therein for me? And that's how you have to approach it. And that's exactly what Yosef did. Yosef said, okay, my brother sold me into slavery. And if you were Yosef, or if I was Yosef, I would have every reason in the world to blame. There's a lot of people I could blame for the reason why my life now looks like a disaster, right? I could blame my brothers, I could blame my father, I could blame the Egyptians, I could blame Ashes Potiphar, there's a lot of people that to blame. And Yosef could have very easily done that, and we obviously would not have been able to judge him had he chosen to do so. But he doesn't. He says that he just views them as puppets in Hashem's hands, and because that, he actually emerges a victor. He emerges much more healthy, and he actually ends up on top. He becomes basically the prince of Egypt. So the Rebbe tells us this is how we have to view the things that happen to us in our life. So now there's kind of two layers here of what I think, at least what the Rebbe is trying to tell us. So one layer is just a general approach, and one is more specific to how Yosef responded. So I'll start with the second one. How Yosef responded was, again, to see it as something that's completely perpetrated from on high, and therefore it's up to me just to interpret it in a way of how I can make me better, how I can further myself in my avodas Hashem, depending on whatever the challenge is. But there's another layer I think the Rebbe talks about in that sikha, and you can look it up, and that's he says something to the effect that when something happens to you, and the Rebbe draws us from the fact that Yosef is giving us this speech after the fact, right? So Yosef is on top. The story is already positive. He can already look back and see how it is that way. And one of the notable things that happens in the story is that Yosef takes the time to look back and look at it that way. Because sometimes in life these things happen to us, and then they do end up working out for us. We don't necessarily take the time to turn around to take stock, so to speak, and to recognize the events for what they were. We get caught up with whatever we're doing. Life kind of moves on really quickly, and we don't necessarily take the time to reflect upon the events that happened to me or us and see how they actually all led up to the positive space that I am in now. So this is what Yosef does, though. Yosef gives this whole speech again after the fact, when his brothers have 22. How many years later? It's 22 years. I don't know. It's a lot of years later. It's a long time later, And Yosef has already, all the trials and all the tribulations that he had to go through, he already went through, and he's already on top. He's the prince of Egypt. He's good. And he looks back and takes the time to review the events and see them in the light that they properly are. So what that tells us, and the Rebbe brings this out, what that tells us is that it's a general approach in life. It's that when something happens to you, you take that Yosef approach, and the way I would say it is to not be lazy. To not be lazy. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure everybody's guilty of this at some point. There's so many things that happen to us on an average day. So much. And not necessarily, I'm not talking about massively existential challenges. Even just stupid stuff that happen all the time. Just whatever. Go through your day, you slip in the snow, whatever, the car drives by you and sprays you with the dirty snow, and you're like, oh, and these things, all these types of things happen. And that's from like the trivial and the stupid, and there could be things that are more, of more impact. But the point is that things are happening all the time that are not necessarily directly a result of what we do. Things happen to us. So now the lazy approach, now I would say it's lazy. I call it lazy because that's not really such a fair way of saying it. It would really be, it's the default approach, really. Yeah, it's to say whatever, you just kind of move on. You don't, either because you don't have the time to think about it, or whatever, you're too caught up, or, whatever you're reading on your phone was too interesting. It depends. We all have reasons why. Or I think it's just a default state of being. And every human being is not necessarily, on an average day, concerned to take the time to really think into it in such an existential way, into all the little stupid things that happen on an average day. So it's, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. But what the events of someone like Yosef Atzadik, and seeing the way he responded to the events that happened to him in his life, it reminds us, it teaches us that we really should do that. We should not let life pass us by. We should look at the events for what they are. So now, when it's like a massively negative thing, huge challenge, right? So then it's a little bit, ironically, becomes actually a little bit easier because you stop and you're thinking, well, like, why is this happening to me? But the truth is, it happens. It should be like that anytime. Anytime something happens, you have to ask yourself, why is this happening to me? What's the message? What's Hashem trying to tell me with why the car sped by and sprayed dirty snow on my dress? What's Hashem trying to tell me? Right? Does the dry cleaners down the block need more parnasa? Maybe. I don't know. But there's always something. There's always something at play. And it's up to us to kind of to wake ourselves up out of our own laziness, to kind of think into it and figure out what it is. So that's like kind of the baseline. That's the baseline. And then the Rebbe adds another thing. Again, I'm kind of pulling from memory here. I don't know if it actually goes in the sequence exactly, but you'll learn the sikha for yourself and you'll tell me whether or not I plagiarized, whether or not I got it right. But then the Rebbe says another thing, which I think is also incredible. So before I get to the next thing, so that's baseline number one. Point number one. If I could do just that, then Dayenu, right? Obviously, if I could lead a life like that, then it'd be incredible, right? But then the Rebbe does not obviously satisfy. Well, it's not even long. It's not a very long farbrengen. The whole farbrengen is maybe like in the printed sikha, it's maybe, I don't know, like 13, 14 pages. It's not that long, relative to Shabbos farbrengen, which is like 50, 60. This is not. So I can imagine the Rebbe spoke probably for 45 minutes, maybe. I don't know. I didn't see the tape, but the printed is, if it's 13, 14 pages, it's probably around that long, maybe an hour. So it's not that long. So, but obviously everything, and obviously the older I get, I realize the smarter everyone else is around me. So when I was younger, I used to be able to rip through a sikha, rip through a mimer really easily. It was really easy. But as I get older, it gets harder and harder to rip through it because there's so much every page. It's like, whoa. It's actually funny. When I was a 14-year-old kid, I grew up on Shlichus in Santa Barbara, California. So when I was I didn't grow up learning Yiddish. I learned Yiddish later in yeshiva, but I'd learned Hebrew earlier on because I learned Chumash and Mishnayos, whatever. So Hebrew I knew before I knew Yiddish. So we had some college students who would come to my parents' Chabad every Shabbos, and my father, at that point of his life already, he was Shabbos afternoon was his time to do other holy things. So, namely to sleep. And these college kids, I was like sitting around because they would walk in, they would try to keep Shabbos. So they'd sit in my parents' house the whole day, just bored. So I was 14 years old, and I wanted to learn with them. Yeah, I was 14 years old. I wanted to learn with them, and I didn't learn Yiddish. I couldn't learn the average Sukkot Sichos. I couldn't learn. So I learned the Maimarim and Lukatim of the Rebbe from Sefer Marmar Malukah, because that's in Hebrew. And every time I think about the fact that I was 14 and learning, it makes no sense to me, because I don't understand those Maimarim today. So I'm not sure exactly what I was doing. Forget about what I was doing. What were they thinking? I have no idea, because I was translating the words that I don't think it made any sense. Because again, I don't even understand them today. Try to learn a Myram, look at Hey today. It's like it takes me hours, and my head is spinning by the time I'm done. So I'm like, how did I do this when I was 14? But anyways, I guess that's the bliss of the ignorance of youth. So so that's step number one. And step number two, again, I don't know. There was a set of steps, but if I could extrapolate it as such. Step number two, the Rebbe says like this, is that, and here he relates it back to the events of Hey Teves. And this kind of blew my mind, because this happens to me all the time. Step number two is like this. So the Rebbe asked a question about the events of Hey Teves, right? As we know, one of the major, like you mentioned, one of the, so to speak, the opposition, the kitrug, the way it was, not so much beruchnius, but as it was facts on the ground, and like in the court case, was one of the things was that the Friedrich Rebbe kind of was a personal figure. He had his library, and a large part of the argument that the library should pass on to his family members as opposed to the Chassidim was the fact that whatever community, whatever movement the Friedrich Rebbe started in his lifetime was limited to his lifetime. That was then. Now he has a private person, he's his own person, and then the movement kind of is no longer active. That was a word that was used. And the Rebbe quoted it, right? He said in Yiddish, he would say it was nicht aktiv. So repeated many times. And obviously something the Rebbe very, very much did not appreciate. So the Rebbe spoke about it by this sikha. And then so the Rebbe reviewed over the claim that Chabad is Lubavitch or hageulah, whichever, I forget exactly which one, but they're all kind of synonymous, that is not active. And so the Rebbe asked a simple question. What do you like? Obviously, on the face of it, like forget about it, you're not a chassid, forget you're not passionately in love with the Rebbe, fine. Just facts on the ground. It's an absurd claim. I mean, we're talking 37 years since Tafshin Yud at that point. 37 years of the Rebbe's Nasias. You go ask anyone, sure today, but even in 1987, go ask anybody what's Chabad. It was a household name already. I mean, to say that the Lubavitch of Chabad is not active it's just a disingenuous. It doesn't even make any sense. So where did it even come from? So that was the Rebbe's question he posed at this Fabring. So what do you think the Rebbe answered? You're right on the money. Exactly. What did the Rebbe say? He said that, you know what? It's not really relevant whether or not it makes any sense, because it doesn't. But what is relevant is that someone's saying it. And if someone's saying it, that means that in some way there's an asinus makim. There's some sort of possibility that someone at least could say it. So what does that mean to us? What's the message to us? That we have to do everything in our power to increase, so much so that even this absurd claim would never even come up. And so obviously, you learn from your enemies. So what do we have to increase in the very thing that they say that we're not active in being active? So we're going to be more active, so that way the next time comes around, whenever, not that there was a next time, but I'm saying the next fool who comes around won't even have any material whatsoever to even come up with such an absurd claim, because there's nothing to talk about. That was the way the Rebbe approached it. So I was just thinking about it. I was like, wow, this is just an amazing way to go about life. And I was thinking about it. I mean, I'll give you a very stupid example, because it's a trivial thing, but it's from my own life. So at least it makes sense to me. But it's a stupid example because it's stupid. But anyways, so for example, I write things. I write things all the time. So part of when you write and you get and your writings get published is you have to submit your writings to someone to edit. Now, whenever you submit your writing for someone else to edit, to publish on their platform, you always run the risk of
Being
changed or being rejected. Exactly. You run that risk. Fine. If you want to, bloviate on your own Facebook page, go right ahead. No one's going to stop you. But if you want to, be published somewhere, at least some, halfway respectable, standards, so someone's going to have say in whether or not it's, acceptable or not. Fine. So I was just last week, I worked on something. I put a considerable amount of time into it, and I wrote it, and I thought it was actually pretty good. I submitted it, and I didn't get any response from my editor. And then I reached out to him a couple of days later. I'm like, what's the deal? He said, well, I had this and this question. He asked me the question. It's by email. So I answered, fine. The question on the material, on the content of what I have written, I don't know what I had written. So I answered the question that he had asked. And then I didn't hear back. So I'm like, and these things expire really quickly because, it's dated material. So I asked him what's going on. And he's like, well, I feel like you're forcing it. Okay. So just freeze that moment. What do I do? So I'm thinking to myself, I'll give you my thought process. So on the one hand, I know that it's a good piece. I know. I'm pretty confident. That it does make sense. So now I have a number of options of what I could do. So I could either continue arguing with him, forcing him to see how it makes so much sense and how I am literally the most brilliant thing written since maybe the Torah at least. I could try to convince him that, right? And I may or may not be successful. But then I thought to myself, and thank God I had I don't know if it's courage, humility, or super ego. I'm not sure. I haven't figured it out yet. But at least I thought to myself, listen, the very fact that someone's saying that he doesn't like it and feels that he's forcing it means that it's forced, right? Because think about it the other way. That's just I tell myself. Think about it the other way around. Let's say it really wasn't a force and it was really good. If it was really good, so no one would have any reason no one would have to say anything. He wouldn't be saying anything because it's really good. And I have submitted things in the past that were really good that went through like vanilla. So the fact that there's opposition here, it just tells me that it could be better. So I wrote him back. Okay, no problem. I'll give you something else. So I tried again. Baruch Hashem, it went through. So this is it's a petty example, but it's a microcosm of how you can approach life. I give you this example because again, it's something I experienced. It's a stupid thing, but it's something I could relate to. But we have all these types of things. You have many times there's a famous English expression, right, about shooting the messenger, right? So what does shooting the messenger mean? Don't shoot the messenger, right? What does that mean? Huh? Punishing the wrong person, okay. Who gave you the message? Say again, I didn't hear you. Say again?
It's not from them, but
okay. So what's the problem with shooting the messenger? Other than what? Blame. Okay. But what do you miss out on when you shoot the messenger? The message. Right. When you shoot the messenger, so sometimes the message is no good also. That could happen. I mean, that happens plenty often. But in those instances when the message is also what actually happens to be a good message, but the messenger you don't like, so oftentimes the human tendency is to shoot the messenger. So for one of two reasons. I mean, there could be a whole host of reasons, but just off the top of my head, for one of two reasons. Either you don't like the person who's giving it the message, or you don't like the message they're giving you. So either way, if you want to kill it, you kill the person. I mean, not kipshute, but you shoot the messenger. That way you don't have to deal with what he or she is saying to you because you don't like what they're saying. So you just do away with them.
Delete WhatsApp.
Exactly. I don't like this, so I'm just going to delete it. Right? But that doesn't make the message go away. That makes the messenger go away, but the message is still true. So some let's say, and this is especially true when it comes to criticism, right? We all get criticism all the time. I mean, right? Happens to me at least. I get criticism all the time. And I mean, everybody gets criticism. You know, a lot of time we live in a world where everyone's a little very, relatively diplomatic. So people couch it in, different words. But at the end of the day, people are always throwing barbs and, criticism here and there all the time. So, and it could be in any area of your life, in your regular mundane life, in your avodas Hashem. How many times have you turned around? I mean, I don't know if this happens, but yeah, I mean, all types of things. People criticize the way you daven. People criticize the way you learn. People criticize
Parenting.
Parenting. I mean, all types of things. I'm saying in avodas Hashem, it's in every area of life. Every area of life, you always have people criticizing you. Now, not necessarily is every criticism that you're going to get is necessarily true. I'm not arguing that. Sometimes, there's always going to be someone who wants to just simply rain on your parade, and that's is what it is. That's that person's problem. And chances are they do it to you, they do it to everybody else they know, and it is what it is. That's who they are. That's their problem, not yours. Fine. But beyond those people who are just simply just those obnoxious, I want to rain on your parade type of person, you have people that tell you things. And they could be valid. It could be valid points, valid messages. So the healthy person, the person who isn't plugged into the plan and recognizes that the messenger is simply a messenger from Hashem. Someone like David HaMelech who says, Shimon ben Gera is not the one cursing me. Hashem is cursing me. He's just a tool, right? He's so much so he wouldn't even let Yoav kill him, right? And Yosef Atzadik takes the same approach. It wasn't my brie. It's not you. I don't blame my failures in life on you. You're just tools. You just told me something. They didn't actually tell him anything, but you just, you perpetrated something in my life, but it's not about you. And so, and in the context of Hey Teves, Rebbe said, if someone's saying something absurd, it's absurd. It's totally absurd. The claim makes no sense. It would be so easy to say that he was either on crack, he was crazy. I don't know what he was doing. I have no idea, honestly. But it's very easy to say, it's to dismiss it. Because when someone says something that's patently absurd, it's human tendency to say, just get out of my life. You're ridiculous. I don't want to have to deal with you. And you would be totally justified in saying that. That's totally fine. Here the Rebbe says, it tells thousands of Chassidim that no, you know what it means? It means we have to do more. So that there can't be even an iota, not a crack of the door left open for anyone to say that we're not doing enough. So, that's, if you could do that, that's incredible. That's an incredible way of living. This is something I think the Rebbe has taught us so many times, that obviously the Rebbe first and foremost teaches us how to be a good Yid, how to be a good Jew. But beyond being a good Jew, the Rebbe, as like a loving father, he really teaches us just how to be a simple, healthy human being. Because imagine if you went around your life thinking that way every time. That's how you conducted your life. Anybody that says things that just bounces off of you because you recognize it's from the Shlich and the Eibishter, and it's just going to make me better, and you respond to every situation like that, you would be an eminently healthy person. I think you would be. We would put all the therapists out of business if we really internalize that message and lived our lives that way. We don't live our lives that way. We get hung up by stupid things that stupid people say. And we get hung up by situations. The challenges wash over us, and we don't respond to them correctly. And then it causes internal emotional issues, and we have to deal with them. And again, I'm not blaming anybody who does that. I'm chief and first and foremost someone who does it as well. But it's just a window into how the teachings of Chassidus and the way the Rebbe taught us in particular could literally just give you a healthy baseline of a life as a human being. So that to me is an incredible gift, and I think that's something we should take home. So l'chaim on water for that. I just have to break it up a little bit, So that's from the Fabring that the Rebbe, it wasn't a Fabring, it was the Sikha, the Rebbe said by the Stender on Hey Teves itself on Tuesday, Tavshin and Zion. But not but, and. Right, so they teach us, right? Don't say the word but. You're supposed to use an and. My daughter was asking me, how does that work? And I said, every time you use the word but, almost every time, just put a comma, right? The word and it usually works. Doesn't.
How old is she?
She's 11. Thank God. Yeah. And over Shabbos, I was teaching her to avoid using the words like and whatever. It was very difficult for her. Very difficult. So slowly but surely, we're getting there. So, and. So I was thinking more about the. So these are this is what I was reading. I like saying like when I had these things that I thought about. So this was when I was putting my baby to sleep when I was reading this for Fabring. Then I had the privilege of having some downtime the other day. So this is what I was thinking about then. The downtime was I was davening for the Amud in 770 Friday night, Shabbos. And they sing L'Chadedi and they sing Echi for a very long time, like 10 minutes. It's actually usually 7 minutes. I've done it before. It's usually 7 minutes. Punk that week, it was 2 weeks ago, it was 10 minutes straight. I was not sure why Zalman would give them 3 extra minutes. But anyways, so when I go to the Amud, I usually try to take a sefer with me, something on the way, so I'll have what to do while I'm waiting. He wants to. I'm not there yet to say for 10 minutes straight. So So I usually take a sefer with me so I can kind of, spend the time. But it's a winter Shabbos, like, you know how it is. I came running in, I barely made it on time to Bechlal daven, so I didn't have the chance to grab a sefer with me on the way, so I had time to think, which I don't usually have. So I was thinking. So this is what I'll share with you now what I was thinking then. So I was thinking about Hey Teves, Taka, because I had a call from the lovely people here about what's going to happen here tonight. So I was thinking about it. And it actually kind of connects to this sikha that the Rebbe said on Hey Teves itself. Just this notion of looking at an event and understanding it in a cosmic way. Just that alone, I think it's kind of a crazy way of living life. And it's something that, again, the Rebbe did every single time. I mean, every single time. The Rebbe did so much. The Rebbe was, again, I'm going to go back to the words, not about the Rebbe, but the point is not to be lazy in life. And in the Rebbe's, let's say in the Rebbe, I'm sure plenty of you learn the Rebbe's Torah, right? Obviously. So you learn the Kotesiches and Mamorim, whatever it is. So one of the things you'll notice about the Rebbe's Torah, and again, I definitely didn't notice this when I was 14, but thank God I'm still learning it. So one of the things you'll notice about the Rebbe's Torah, I'll ask you, what strikes you about the Rebbe's Torah? The Rebbe's Torah is unique. The way the Rebbe learned Torah, the way the Rebbe taught Torah, the way the Rebbe looked at Torah. Okay, there was very practical, it's true, as we just discussed. What else strikes you about the Rebbe's Torah?
Certainly, I feel like it assumes you know a lot of other stuff.
Okay.
Like all the previous Rebbe's.
Particularly in the Chassidus, yeah, for sure. In the Memorim, yeah, for sure.
And a lot of very goes on a system, the question, that.
Okay. Systematic, yeah. There's one thing I'm looking for. You haven't hit on it yet.
Like
Other
the things that are happening of the day.
Okay, yeah, the Rebbe pays a lot of attention. Yeah, that's true. Anything else? It's usually Ruchnius is normal, it's true. The Rebbe's baseline is Ruchnius and he works from there. That's true.
Repeat things. I mean, it depends on the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's like when things are important, it's like repetitive.
Okay. There is. Yeah, it's relevant.
So it's term Lashon Hara more than anybody else.
Hamaisho Ikra, right? That's definitely something the Rebbe said more than definitely anybody else.
Very into like this world, Rashmi as well.
Right, practical, exactly. About making everything very practical. So
Someone submitted
an answer.
Yes. Let's see. He brought a lot of sources for his ideas and bringing Mashiach.
Okay, that was very well sourced. That's true, and focused on Mashiach. Yes. So another thing that strikes me, again, I was going to ask because everything strikes something. There's a different element that strikes everybody else, and they're all true. One thing that I've noticed in particular is that the Rebbe pays a lot of attention to every single silly, what would seem silly detail. Everything is important. And like, again, no laziness. Every little thing is important. Everything is in detail. And not only that, the Rebbe was very big into achdus of Torah, right? That everything in Torah is connected. So if the same three Pirushim on one Rashi, they're all bringing out different points of the same thing. If the name of the person who said the thing in Rashi is relevant. If the events happen on Tuesday and not Wednesday, it's relevant because it's on Tuesday and not Wednesday. Every single thing, the Rebbe was just stubbornly, insisted that every single detail has relevance. And it's like, it blows your mind because it's like, how much can you, give up eventually, most people don't think that way. And
it sounds like background noise and he like brings it up.
Exactly. And not only that, what impresses, I don't need to be impressed, but everybody doesn't need me to be impressed, but what blows my mind, at least, is that in a way, this type of learning, I don't know how many, I'm assuming you're all very smart, but I'm not necessarily so smart, but I know some very smart people. And there's a certain tendency among very smart people to view such a stubbornness as a little bit primitive, if you may say it that way. Because you focus on big ideas, you focus on developing a thesis, you focus on seeing, big pictures. So, You're going to get technical on which Tana was the one who actually said the Maimer in Rashi, or how many words Rashi brought in Dibra Maskal. This minutia could get almost tedious. Or open any Farbrengen of the Rebbe from any year. Open up any Farbrengen. I would say, and for sure in the later years, I would say the first 3, 5, 6, 10 pages, right? The Rebbe is spending a lot of time going through like what I would call a preamble before he actually jumps into what's going on, right? It's the day, it's the year, it's the month, and we know, and this, and it's all, so much stuff is going on, and it's like some cynical people could see it as a little bit tedious. But the Rebbe was very insistent that everything has so much detail and everything has so much meaning. And the funny thing is that because of that stubbornness, so to speak, that commitment to finding meaning in every single detail, the Rebbe was able to find so much depth. So when the Rebbe said, no, the name of who said it in Rashi is important, it adds like a whole other 3 pages in the Sikha, and you come up with these mind-blowing ideas. I was learning a Sikha 2 weeks ago, and it's a Rashi Sikha, a complex Rashi Sikha. So again, it's a Rashi Sikha about the Masois and the Midbar. A Rashi Sikha. And the Rebbe gets into the whole discussion about Bechir Chashis and do we have and about sin and about how sin is engineered from on high. It's like wild, crazy stuff. Which like I don't. It's there's a couple times the Rebbe revisited this idea. So there's a more well-known sikha in Chelek Hey for Parshas Lech Lecha, and there's another mimer in Tashin Lamed Aleph, I believe, about it as well. So the Rebbe revisited this idea more than once, but this idea, namely that not only are the challenges that Hashem give us from on high, the challenges that we get are from even the mistakes that we make, the sins that we do, those are also engineered from on high, and nothing is outside of Hashem's will. And try to wrap your head around that for a second. That's a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea. It sounds like somebody maybe even a little bit heretical. So it's a crazy idea, and it's a very, very deep, profound idea. Now, where does the Rebbe, in that sikh at least, where does the Rebbe kind of like pull this idea from? Where does he find it in the Rashi? From a v'chulu. One v'chulu. That's how the Rebbe finds it. Because Rashi said v'chulu, so that's how we know that not only are the challenges that Hashem gives you also from above, but even the mistakes that you make are also from Hashem. How do we know that? Because Rashi says v'chulu. So I'm thinking to myself, that's ridiculous. From one v'chulu, that's what you came up with. You came up with something that can shake the foundations of Bechir Chashis. From one v'chulu, it's ridiculous. I mean, in a good way, I'd say. So this is the way the Rebbe approached everything in Limud Torah and in life. In life, this insistence that everything has meaning, everything is like much more beyond what it seems. So comes Hey Teves, and all the Rebbeim taught us this way, right? The Alter Rebbe did the same thing. The Alter Rebbe went to jail. You know, there's a famous joke about Jewish holidays, right? They always what are Jewish holidays in one line?
They try to tell us.
Right? They try to kill us. We fought. We won. Let's eat. Right? So you could look at it very simply. It's a primitive thing, right? So every Chabad Rebbe went to jail, was freed, go home. We're happy. Let's drink. Right? So you could reduce it to that, right? So the Alter Rebbe was a leader, was a world leader, a Jewish leader. He had profound impact on his community. He went to jail. That was a sad thing. He was freed from jail. That's a happy thing. So let's uncork the bottles and let's party. So it could be just that, and that would be fair. The Alter Rebbe came out of jail and said, no, that's not what it was about. I was visited in jail by the Maggid and the Baal Shem Tov, and they told me, and I asked them what's going on. And the Chassidus is a Kitrug Momaila, and there was before Petterberg, after Petterberg, and we were Zeichet. The Alter Rebbe's Chassidus that Mamish blew the roof off the house. So it was a crazy thing. So the Alter Rebbe was the one who told us that that's what happened. We wouldn't have known that that's what's happening. We only had the eyes. We only had the tunnel vision that we have. The events as they appear in front of us, that's what we see. The Alter Rebbe told us, no, it's way beyond that. So Hey Teves also, I think really the story of Hey Teves in a way is more primed, I think, even for this tunnel vision. We didn't have the Rebbe telling us what it was about. It would be very easy to see this as a family feud, because that's essentially what it was. Again, facts on the ground. So it's family feud. It's none of our business. I think there even were people who felt that way. Like, it's none of our business. It's like something that's unfortunately going on between the family. You know, let that happen there, and we'll find out whatever happens afterwards, or we won't.
Like, it was almost like that, right? Like,
In the beginning, yeah.
was quiet about it.
Yeah, 2 years. So, not 2 years, for about a year. So then the Rebbe came out by a Fabring, and it was the summer of Tashminim Hey, And the Rebbe spoke this fiery sikh, and all of a sudden, no idea what hit them. I mean, I wasn't there, but I could say that I was born, but I wasn't there. And they had no idea what hit them. And the Rebbe kept on pushing and teaching us that something profound is going on. And like you mentioned, it was really a kitrug. It was a kitrug in the Rebbe's Nasias. It was a kitrug in the Rebbe's Nasias. The same with the Alter Rebbe was thrown into jail. Why? Because he was spreading Chassidus at such an exponential level, which reminds me, just to compliment what you said, it was a kitrug on the Rebbe's Nasias. There's a sichas, I don't know exactly where it's on the chaf somewhere. I don't know. It's a Yitis Kislev sichas. It's probably in chaf or chafei. I don't know. You can look it up. But there's a sicha of the Rebbe about Yitis Kislev. The Rebbe asks a very basic question about Yitis Kislev. That we know that the Alter Rebbe went to jail. Why did he go to jail? Help me out here. Why did he go to jail? Right? There was a kid. No, I'm saying that was the facts on the ground. Cosmically, why did he go to jail? It was a kitrug on his spreading chassidus. So there's a famous story. I'm sure you all know it. It's a story with Pinchas Karetz and Alter Rebbe that they one time were walking and they found a manuscript of chassidus on the ground, right? And Pinchas Karetz was very upset. And he said he was going to go to the Al-Magid to tell him that enough's enough, he can't spread chassidus so far. So what did the Alter Rebbe tell him? You know the story. Yeah, what was the mashal? Give me a break here. Go for it.
He had a son that was sick, and the only thing that could cure him was every doctor came, and the only thing that could cure him was a jewel in town.
Right? The Kesser Amal, right? And
they said it might not come. I don't know if the details are correct, but it might not even get into his mouth, but he would take the chance because to cure his son is his only wish. So
exactly, and that's why even if 1 million pages of chassidus will fall on the ground, if one page will be learned by you and me, and it'll actually change us and make us better Jews, it's worth it, right? So the Rebbe said, chazed over this story and asked the question. And that worked. Pinchas Karetz was pacified. Everyone was happy, and everybody went home, and everyone was happy, right? Everyone lived happily ever after. Not really, but. So the Rebbe asked the question. So if that's the case, the Alter Rebbe already took care of the opposition. Why did the Alter Rebbe have to go to jail again? Right? The Alter Rebbe took care of it. So the Rebbe answered, obviously because the Alter Rebbe took it to a new level. So whatever the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid did was met with their opposition, and the Alter Rebbe was able to mollify that opposition by giving this remarkable mashal. But then the Alter Rebbe went ahead and took things to the next level. And if you learn the Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe, you'll see that for yourself. And so he was met with his opposition. Sorry, whichever forces were vanquished in the first battle, the special forces said, this is a new battle. So they came out guns blazing, and again the Alter Rebbe was able to emerge triumphant by coming out of jail. So we could obviously it's simply understood that the Rebbe took his Nasias, the Rebbe took Lubavitch, and Mamish turned it around 180 degrees, right? We're familiar with the fact that the Lubavitch 7 years ago looked very, very different than the way it does today. The Rebbe reimagined almost everything. The Rebbe we could say the Friedrich Rebbe and the Rebbe Shab were sending out shluchim, but nothing even close to what the Rebbe did. The Rebbe pushed us to go on shlichus, and the Rebbe pushed us. Amol Chassidus was all about avodah matzmai, working with yourself, right? They used to say that Chassidim, ironically, the Chassidim talk about bittul all the time, right? But Chassidim are ironically, they're obsessed with themselves all day. Because the Chassid is working on himself or herself all day. So ironically, the ones who are officially touting the bittul, they're the ones who are working on this, are obsessing about themselves all day. But obviously, it's tongue in cheek because we're obsessing over ourselves to make ourselves better and to change ourselves. So Chassidus was about doing mitzvahs behider, skashers to the Rebbe, learning Chassidus, and then the Levush, I guess, somewhere down the list. But that was what Chassidus was about. And then comes the Rebbe and completely reimagines everything. And the Rebbe says, the Rebbe sends everybody on shlichus. The Rebbe changes everything. One of my favorite examples, by the way, just to give a little tangible example of how different, just from the Rishon to the Shvi it is the Rebbe's approach to France. Anyone here from France? No? France?
No.
I'm not either. if you didn't guess that till now. So we know the Alter Rebbe literally passed away running away from Napoleon, right? That's why the Alter Rebbe passed away. I mean, the Gashmias. Now, the Alter Rebbe was vehemently opposed to Napoleon. Vehemently. So much so, he sent his Chassidim to be spies for Napoleon, for the Tsar. And the Alter Rebbe was when he was running away from Napoleon, he didn't even want Napoleon to get his hands on his possessions. So he instructed his son to burn down his house and everything inside of it. The Alter Rebbe was like vehemently opposed to Napoleon. Now, why? What was the Alter Rebbe's reasoning? You tell me.
Because it would be financially better for the Jews under his rule, not Lord's.
The Alter Rebbe was afraid of, we could boil it down to one word. Yeah. Yeah, well, assimilation. Yeah, the result of freedom of religion, right? Napoleon represented the spirit of emancipation, right? Which is really at the core of what France is till today, right? France, they're the three words on their I don't know, it's their motto, it's their, I don't know exactly what its legal status is, right? But it's, liberté, fraternité, égalité, which means liberty, freedom, egalitarianism, right? It's about equality and freedom, and they're hyper focused on freedom of speech and no religion, right? So in America we have separation between religious and church and state, but in France it's the other way around. They have suppression of religion when it comes to state. There isn't. They specifically stay away from religion. So they're very into their secularism. That's the peak of secularism. That's really the big. I mean, it traces its way back to the French Revolution, but Napoleon is like the forebearer of that. So the Alter Rebbe was opposed to that. So whenever I heard the story as a kid, I mean, this is what they explained to you as I'm growing up in Cheder, right? The Alter Rebbe was Napoleon, the Tsar, and even though it would be worse on the Tsar, it was pogroms and you name it, they had it on the Tsar, but at least the Yiddish guy would be more intact. So whenever I heard that as a kid, it always struck me as odd. We're Lubavitchers. We don't think that way. Since when are we afraid of a little bit of Gashmias? When did that ever bother us, right? We carry smartphones in our pockets with or without filters, depending on who you're talking to. When are we afraid of Gashmias? We move out on the most ridiculous places. I grew up in Santa Barbara, California. I know people grow up in crazier places. I remember one time visiting my brother. He's on the campus in Santa Barbara. I was a Bachar, then I visited him for Shabbos. And I remember waking up Shabbos morning and looking outside and just surveying. Suffice it to say that I was with a friend of mine. I looked at a friend of mine. I was like, how is my brother raising kids in this insanity? It's ridiculous. Baruch Hashem, he has beautiful kids so far. So why? It just always struck me as odd. Why is Alter Rebbe so opposed to it? Well, since when are we afraid of a little bit of emancipation? Well, we'll show him how to do it. So obviously things changed. And this is the way the Rebbe taught us. So much so, and Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev, Tashin and Beis, what happened, right? The Shliach Mullah Zima from France brought a whole group of French Yidden to the Rebbe for Shabbos, and the Rebbe spoke about it. The Rebbe spoke about France, and the Rebbe said how the Klippa of France has been transformed, and we're all about getting ready to greet Mashiach, and we're able to transform it. And the Rebbe embraced the French national anthem itself. And we sing it now every day, every Shabbos in shul for Hades for Amunah. So it's mamish a 180, right? From the times of the Alter Rebbe, who literally died, running away from Napoleon, instructed his own chassidim to go in the lion's den and spy on Napoleon to help the Tsar. Comes the Rebbe 200 years, however many years later, and says, we're going to embrace France and we're going to sing the French national anthem in Shachris on Shabbos. That's about as a 180 transformation as you can get, right? So the Rebbe Mamish retooled everything. So he was met with his came the opposition. Tavshim Zayin Hey Teves was the opposition. I mean, leading up to that. And so and this is the Rebbe told us that this was what was going on. We didn't make this. I didn't make this up. No one, the Chassidim didn't make this up. The Chassidim had no idea. So the Rebbe told us what was going on. There was a kitrug mumayla. And the Rebbe said they want the benkel. That's what the Rebbe said, right? They want the chair. They want the nesias. So that's the way the Rebbe viewed it. That's the way the Rebbe taught us to look at it. And Baruch Hashem, we all know the end of the story. But if I could just to focus on that type of vision, that type of perspective, is something we should always have. Something we should always have in events in life. So I would say in two areas of life. First of all, when you're learning. When you learn, is to learn at least try, learn the way the Rebbe learned. Learn and be stubborn on every detail and mine it and plumb it for what it's worth, because it's incredible stuff that can go there. So yeah, it repeats itself fairly often. You should know And I found this, that if you don't get lazy and you really actually read the word slowly and try to understand what is it saying here that it doesn't say here, you'll find that it says something here that it doesn't say here. And if you actually work on translating the words, and when I say translate, I mean like to talk them through and say them in a way that actually makes sense to the next guy or next person, you'll find that there's so much depth that's lying there if we don't let ourselves get away with falling back onto preconceived assumptions. Oh yeah, I know, I know this. No, you don't know it yet. Read it, learn it, plumb it for what it's worth, and there's a lot of depth there. And then in life in general, that's in learning, b'chalal, and b'frat actually, b'frat and learning. But then I would say in life in general, that we have to walk through life and ask and try to look at things with that kind of Rebbe cook, the way to view events as larger than life, the stupid things that happen to us, stupid things, the bigger things, definitely the big challenges that you get in life. Don't become a victim to those challenges. Don't become a victim to those hardships. Understand that there's something cosmic, there's something huge at play. There's something way beyond what meets the eye. And it's up to you just to say, okay, so Hashem is giving me something. Hashem is making, I don't know what it is because we don't have that type of vision to actually know what it is. We have to just be able to sense that there's something. But what we could do is take it as a sign to say, I have to be better in this. Whatever is being challenging me, I have to be better. So that tomorrow, no one should ever be able to say that I'm not good enough in this respect.